Welcome to the Awakening podcast, where we have truth tellers, not whistleblowers, where we have facts and not conspiracy theorists, the podcast with solutions. And today, my guest is currently in Mexico, Laura Jane Bolton. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, you might tell us about your awakening journey.
Oh, yes, my awakening journey. Well, for me, my awakening it's kind of come in stages. And I think perhaps this is what it's like for many people. I think it first started several years ago when I was experiencing lots of health challenges, and I was being prescribed all these pharmaceuticals by the doctors and being told by them that, that some of the natural health stuff that I was starting to look at was irrelevant. It didn't work. The fact that diet had no effect on the gut and no effect on my mood and things like that. And so I really at that point, it got to the point where I was, I'd gone to the doctor and I've been feeling really anxious and quite depressed for a while. And they got me to fill out this silly questionnaire, and they said, oh, you've ticked an X number of boxes, you've got depression. And they started to write me a prescription for pills. And it was at that point that there's something within me just felt, this is not right. I know this is not the answer. And I started researching, and I got into functional medicine. I discovered people like Chris Kresser and Dr. Mark Hyman and Dave Asprey of Bulletproof and biohacking and all this stuff, and started to also learn about the pharmaceutical industry and the medical system. And it completely opened my eyes. So I guess that was kind of me, like Alice going down the rabbit hole. And but I think when you then go into the rabbit hole, what happens is you're part of the rabbit warren, and then there are all these different avenues and things that you start to discover about the world, how the world works, and that things are not as we've been taught they actually are. And so yes, my entry into awakening, I think, was really around my health stuff. And I went on a natural healing journey, and through that I managed to resolve all of my health challenges naturally. And I haven't taken a pharmaceutical drug of any kind for around 6 years now.
Brilliant.
And I was constantly sick. I was always sick with something, and it's so rare that I get anything now. And so that was for me the eye opener, the mind opener, and a start of a journey. I think for many people, it's sort of, you take the red pill, but then it's a journey of discovery which takes time. And then I started learning about things like 9/11 and all these other things that have happened, and realizing that most of what we have been told by media and by governments and other authority figures, I guess, are actually not as they seem. And once you know, exactly. And you can't go back to sleep. It's just a knowing.
That's what I love about this, actually, is like, once people become awake, they don't go back to sleep.
Yes, it can just take one thing to kind of just really open your eyes and open your mind. And it's there is no going back. And then I think, this year has accelerated that for me. I've learned so much more. I've gone even deeper down the rabbit hole. And I know that it's the same for many, many people. And in fact, I must say, I'm so grateful that I have been quite awake for a few years, because I cannot imagine how tough it must be for people to be waking up now with everything that's going on, and just, and having, it's almost like a sudden,
that's actually
very violent wake up.
Yeah, because you'd be similar to me. You'd obviously have a few people maybe attacking you or writing nasty comments, but for someone that's just woken up when they're finding out like 100 different things, because lots of people trusted the medical industry, they trusted the pharmaceutical industry, they trusted the government, and now all of a sudden. And I think that if they start doing the research too much, they can get actually depressed. It can get you like that you're depressed from looking at too much of this stuff.
Oh yes, that's a really, really good point. And I'm seeing that, in my work, my usual work, when I'm not sharing truths and things. I am a health coach, so I'm seeing so much anxiety. People are either feeling anxious or depressed, or both. They're just feeling really unpleasant feelings, and this is completely and utterly natural, because all of the conditions that have been created in the last few months are really all the classic triggers for extreme stress and anxiety. It's almost as if they've designed it that way. So it's things like overwhelm of information, uncertainty, having your beliefs challenged and shattered, having people criticizing you, having conflict in relationships, which a lot of people are experiencing, with friends and family who are not on the same page as them. There's a lot of stuff going on there. All of those things are major triggers for the stress response. And the problem with the stress response is that if it's intense and sustained, we can't even think straight. We can't make clear decisions. We can't make good judgments. And then we can kind of spiral. And this is why we're seeing a great rise in mental health issues, but also suicides. It's just an overwhelm of so many different things happening. And then you look at people who have, also experienced problems with things like job losses, financial issues, and that kind of thing. It's really, for mental health, it's quite catastrophic. And so that's something that I'm definitely seeing a lot of. And my heart really goes out to people who are either weren't already awake, or who haven't done the inner work, I guess, to build resilience. Because I've gone through a real spiritual journey. Like, yes, I became awake to the way the world is and the way things are. But also I've been through, over the last few years, a real spiritual journey. I lost everything. My life changed dramatically 3 years ago. And so since then, I've been through that, and I've built such a strong internal resilience that I feel actually really well equipped to deal with everything that's happening. But I know that there are many people who haven't done that, and their comfortable lives have suddenly been disrupted in a huge way. And sometimes their entire belief system is being shattered, and that's incredibly traumatic. We're going through on my own podcast, actually, I interviewed a trauma specialist the other day, and she was explaining how we are going through a mass global trauma, and the impact of that. So I think it's just super important that we're mindful of that, and also mindful of that in others. When we are sharing things, or we are talking with people, just having that appreciation that not everybody is where we're at. Everyone has a different history, different conditioning, different traumas. They're at a different place in their level of consciousness and their awareness. And so I think it's very, very important that we recognize and honor that for other people.
Oh, exactly. And like, I actually had a similar situation. I lost everything as well, going back a bit longer than maybe 6 years. But by going through that, that's how I kind of really woke up. I mean, first it was the medical industry. Years before I realized that industry was corrupt. But seeing the courts corruption, the legal system, seeing the banking, how corrupt it is. And now because like a lot of businesses, small businesses are being closed and people think they're going to get bailed out by the government, but the government aren't actually going to do that for them. They don't really care. They're keeping people inside. They're not getting sunlight. So like people have to become conscious of these things and stop relying on Mr. Government to think that they're looking out for you and your health, because if you actually research everything and look at the dangers of wearing a mask, even not just wearing a mask but being in lockdown and not having, you know, social contact with people, that it's affecting your psyche. And which are they actually helping you? Are they helping you to be, you know, like the way I tell some people is, if they cared about our health, how come they allow things like Coca-Cola, like Diet Coke with aspartame in it? If really they cared about our health, how come all of these products are full of toxins? How come you've got GMO? They care about your health, do they? So
Absolutely. And this is one of the things I've been talking a lot about recently, and trying to point out to people. And actually, if you know, as someone who is heavily involved in health, if you were to ask me, you know, what are all the things I should do to create poor physical and mental health, I would actually tell you to do all the things that the government have been telling you to do for the last 6 months and beyond. As you say, there's a bigger picture. There's specifically the things that we've had imposed on us in the last 6 months in regard to the virus. But there's also the bigger picture, which is about, as you say, the GMOs, the pharmaceuticals, the toxins in the water, the toxins in the air, the toxic things in, you know, in products we put on our skin. They've been shown to be cancerous. Johnson & Johnson gets sued like every year for their products, and the products that people put on their babies. Like, it is just, it's truly criminal. It's all and what's happening is we are being attacked with toxicity from all angles. Everything about the way that and then EMFs and 5G and things like that, right? So we are being, the way that we live in general, particularly in cities, none of those conditions are conducive for positive physical or mental health. And I believe it's by design. You know, you want people, you know, the governments and others, you know, others that are above them, want people to be dumbed down. They want people to be sick. They want people to be, because if you're really well and alert and awake and conscious, you're not very easy to control, and you don't make them any money. You know, I see it like a big system. It's like the food companies and big agriculture make people sick, and then the pharmaceutical companies swoop in.
to have a patient for life.
And they have a patient for life. It is, you are a customer for life. And often it's the pharmaceuticals which make people sick in the first place, you know, like vaccines, and antidepressant drugs, like all sorts of medications,
like
even
the side effect to antidepressant drugs is suicidal tendencies. So, and there is 100 things you can. Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's crazy. And even, you know, and then there's the water, and then there's the toxins in the food and the GMOs, everything. It's just, you know, and I have a personal experience of this in regards to my sister. Many years ago, we're going back like 20 years now. She had a challenge with, like a health challenge just with her, to do with her teeth. And so she was given certain medications. Then they caused symptoms like nosebleeds. Then she got more medication. Then she got depressed. Then they gave her antidepressants, and it just got worse and worse and worse, and more sickness. And none of it was necessary. None of it. And she's now still ill. Like, she, you know, it's just, she has chronic fatigue syndrome. She has depression. She has, you know, she can't, despite trying to do the natural health stuff, her body just doesn't seem to be responding, because this is what happens. And then when I see the statistics, on how many people, for example, are taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, it's like half of America, like
Yeah,
half of adult Americans, or something insane like that. Like, it's difficult. It's easy for me to forget because I don't take pharmaceuticals, because
yeah, but
I'm
no,
well.
I know it is a huge amount, and also for the children, they're giving the children, they're telling them they've got ADD, HD, or whatever. I forget the name of the one that they give the
Yeah,
children.
Ritalin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like that is sick, and like I think you need to step back as a parent and stop looking at the Mr. Doctor who knows everything. They know one thing: it's about profit. They're getting a kickback from the pharmaceutical industry for every prescription that they make. That in itself, they should be locked up. Every single doctor that takes a kickback should be locked up. They should have their license removed, because there is ethical doctors. There is some brilliant doctors out there, and they'll try to go down the natural route. So I'm not attacking all the doctors, but there is an extremely high percentage that they're very wealthy, but they're wealthy for themselves. They don't care about
Yes.
you.
Yes, and also, you know, doctors are like your typical doctor. Like, I'm not sure what they call it in the US, but in the UK we call it a GP, the general practitioner, or we just call it our doctor. You know, they are not trained to get to the root of health challenges or to help people get optimal health. They are trained to diagnose illnesses from symptoms and then treat symptoms with medication. That is what they are trained for. They don't receive any nutrition training.
Zero. We were talking about that because I had some doctors on, I had a pharmacist on. Most countries, I think it's only Albania they do 6 months. The rest of them, in the whole course, they do 6 hours, and most of them do
Yes.
zero. And like I'm telling people, because one of the things that I had read was the healthiest people in the world, the Wheel of Health, I think it was called. And they were on about people living over 100 years of age. They were the Hunza in the Himalayas. And the guy, the doctor, like the book is about 80 years old. The doctor, Dr. Wrench, had tested the foods and given them to rats, so that when a rat of 2 years is equivalent to a human of 50. And when they gave him the same foods, there was no illnesses whatsoever. And then when they gave him the poor food, they were all tumors, cancers, and basically what we see in society today. So you will see a big connection with that. And that's why I kind of use that. Like, I have the book ready to go out, and I'm making a connection with the rats for a reason, because if we have the same organs, like they're saying there's no testing done on the 5G yet. An independent test was showing that it caused tumors in rats. Alarm bells straight away. Aspartame, it causes tumors in rats. GMO, tumors in rats. So if that does not wake you up, I kind of don't know really how that is fact. So you can
It
actually
is.
research that. Don't believe me. Don't believe Laura what we're saying. Go away and
Yeah.
don't check Uncle Google, because I presume you've realized that in the last few years that Uncle Google is hiding all the natural remedies. They're even taking it down. Some of my guests have said that all their friends' stuff
They
is
are.
being taken
Yes.
down. So
They
we
are.
have to
Yes.
be aware of that.
Yeah, I mean that's happened. You know, in the, because I kind of move in the natural health circles. You know, there are many people who I have learned so much from. You know, people like, you know, like your Chris Kressers and Mark Hyman and Dr. McCullough and people like that, who have been doing, you know, the natural, real health stuff, and they have been, you know, in terms of Google algorithms and searchability and things like that, that's been going down for years, and it's the statistics to show it. And now, I mean, particularly now, anything to do with natural healing is being shadow banned, or is being censored. You know, we see this more and more. And I encourage people to ask the question: why would natural health solutions, which have been around since the beginning of time, why would they be so heavily censored across all platforms? And Google is the same. Google decides what you get to see, and Google is very much controlled by pharmaceutical companies and the other big industries, right? Because this is the thing, people often think that like the government are like the highest power and they make all the decisions, and actually there's a lot of people that are controlling. controlling
I think
them.
in the last few years, people have realized that how each country, how could they be running the country? There's no way. There is such a level above them
Yeah,
that controlling
absolutely.
everything. And
Absolutely.
like we're talking there now about the health. One of the things, and I think every single person that's listening will know somebody that has died from cancer or who has got cancer. And you have the medical cancer industry. I can't write anything about this because it'll be taken down straight away. But there was a guy called Royal Raymond Rife in the 30s had invented the Rife machine, and he had cured all the people that he'd done on the test, but they shut that down. And he was even saying at that stage that I think, and because there was tapes that were recovered about him talking a few years later, I think in the 50s, that there was like something like 127 million that was raised and only 50,000 went to the charity. So even all these charities that are supposed to be helping people for cancer, they're corrupt as well. And you need to
Yes, they
actually be
are.
aware of that.
They are. And again, this is something that is kind of quite mind shattering for a lot of people when they realize that a lot of these, these so-called charities and research institutes and things are not, that it's all about money and power. And it's like when you look at, if you look at any of this stuff, if people were healthy, billions or more would be lost. It's an industry, like illness is an industry. And I know it's really hard for people to comprehend. And I have people say things to me like, no, but no one would purposefully make people sick. No one would want to keep people sick. And it's because we're coming from our own, what we really mean is we wouldn't do that. And therefore we can't understand that, oh no, surely that wouldn't be the case. I hear that a lot from my mum. She says, surely not. Every time I talk with her, she's like, oh yeah, but they wouldn't do that. Surely not. But it's difficult for people to understand. But this is the reality of it. And the more you dig and the more you learn, as we said before, you can't unknow it. And the reality is that sick, healthy people don't make money.
No,
And
exactly.
and I know myself from content I've been putting out in the last few months about helping people with their immune system naturally. It's been censored. It's been either removed or it's shadow banned, which is very sneaky. But it just means that hardly anybody gets to see it. And there are also certain hashtags that are being hidden on social media. So I know that the hashtag natural immunity, I haven't checked today to see if it's still blocked, but I assume it is. It's hidden. There are several other hashtags to do with natural health hidden. Well, why would they want to hide natural immunity? And this is stuff like that we're talking about, stuff like nutrition and not being in fear, not being stressed, because stress and fear is actually, in my opinion, the biggest impactor on our immune system and the suppression of our immune system. Because if we're in a state of stress and fear, our immune system activity can be greatly suppressed. And so this is another thing. It's not just the food and the GMOs and the chemicals and all of that. It's also the stress and the fear. And people can think themselves or believe themselves sick. And this is actually something that I haven't really seen people talking about. I'm sure people are talking about it, but I haven't really seen many people talking about the power of belief. So one of the people I love is Bruce Lipton. And he wrote a book called The Biology of Belief, and he does a lot of work around this. And also Dr. Joe Dispenza, they tend to do a bit of work together as well. And they are all about the power of the mind and the beliefs on the physical body, on the immune system, on the ability to heal, and also on the ability to make us sick. So if we actually believe that we are going to get sick or we're going to die, we can actually make it happen. With our beliefs, that's how strong it is. That's what placebo is. You know, people believe that placebo is real. And actually, going back to what we were talking about with regards to antidepressants, there have been studies which have shown that that a placebo is as effective as a pharmaceutical drug, because people believe it's making them feel better. And there's been lots of studies done on, you know, on this stuff, but
there was actually
they all get
one.
hidden, of course.
No, but I remember there was, I don't know where I read it, but they basically, people with knee problems, that they needed knee surgery, so they just done the little holes to pretend they had the surgery, and they had the exact same results. And on the other side, then, where you have a doctor telling somebody you've got 6 months to live, it usually they last 6 months, because unfortunately the person believes in the doctor, instead of actually realizing that there are so many different things you could do to help yourself.
This is true, and this is something that's really important for people to understand. You know, we really, and I actually think this is why, if you imagine, particularly with someone who, if think about a few years ago, like many years ago, when I used to get like sick a lot, maybe we're going back 10 years ago now, I got the flu, or had the flu, you know, this sort of standard winter flu. And I was sick. I mean, I really was sick. I couldn't move for a week. I can't ever remember feeling so ill. But at no point did I think I was going to die, because it's flu. So I just thought, I've got terrible flu. I had lots of problems with my ear, nose, throat and chest, because of all my stuff that my health stuff that I hadn't dealt with. But it was just normal. It was like, well, it's really bad, but it's just flu. So never at any point did I think, oh my goodness, this is a deadly disease, I'm going to die. Imagine now, particularly people who are watching mainstream media, I've watched like 5 minutes of mainstream media going on about this stuff, and even I started to feel anxious, even though I know the stuff they're saying isn't true, because it's so intense, it's so fear-mongering. And so I imagine if you're someone who is watching that all the time, and then you start to get the symptoms of a flu or a cold, or what they say is COVID or whatever, many people are going to go into a panic state. And what happens when they go into that panic state is their immune system suppresses dramatically. And what happens when the immune system suppresses dramatically? You can't fight. Your body can't heal. Your body can't, you know, defend itself and heal from whatever, because sickness is nothing to be feared. You know, when if we have a cold or whatever, it's, you know, it's the body doing its thing. The body can heal. You just need to give it what it needs, which is, you know, like rest and nutrition and meditation and breathing and all of this stuff. But the majority of people who aren't awake and who are believing what the media and the government's telling them, it's very likely that they are either going to literally think themselves ill, or when they do get some kind of symptom, they go into panic. Oh my God, I've got COVID. Oh my God, I'm going to die. And if you are thinking that and you are truly believing it, you probably are. You're going to get very, very sick. And so I think this is something that is being a bit overlooked, the power of our thoughts and our beliefs on how sick we get and on whether we die. And you're right with regard to cancer patients, they usually do live more or less to the week, how long they've been told they're going to live. And to me, the whole concept of telling someone how long they've got to live is bonkers. How do you know, like, you know, someone's going to die in like 3 months? It's ridiculous. And often also I read, I mean, this was a few years ago and I can't remember the source, but I'd read a study that was done on people when they were being given a cancer diagnosis, how as soon as they got the diagnosis, they declined dramatically in their health. And it's because you suddenly, I mean, we all know what it's like to get bad news, right? You know, when you find out someone's died, that's a classic, you know, and you get that feeling, it's that sinking feeling and that feeling of just overwhelm and just grief. That's what people experience. But when you're going through that and you're already unwell, it's just making your body more and more weak and more toxic. And I believe that this is all by design. You know, the fear mongering, it's to convince people, it's to get people into this mindset of fear, and that they're going to get sick, and that, you know, they're going to die. And actually it's not true. But the power of the mind is, it really is immense. And this is why it's something that I think everybody needs to be mindful of.
And like the other thing is, because people are that you can bring in illness on you. I mean, once you train yourself you can do the opposite. If you feel something coming on, you can be positive and stop a cold coming on. You can do totally the opposite if you can use your mind on that. But when you have people that think they have a cold, they're feeling sick, they bring their immune system down, then they're going to the hospitals. The hospitals are getting financial incentives for actually, one, diagnosing you. So whether you have it or not, they want their money. And then when they put you on a machine, it's like something like 40,000 euro or dollars. So like, what? Ask yourself that question. Why are they doing that? Do you think that's ethical to that they get financially incentive? That's not encouraged. And the people that are going on the ventilators don't tend to be coming off them. So they're not really, they're not there to help you. So my advice, I would not go to a hospital. I would, just stock up on the proper food and build up your system, get the right sleep, and strengthen yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea, for me, the worst thing would be to go to hospital. For me personally, if I, knowing what I know, I feel that hospital is the worst place to be. And actually, medical error is the third leading cause of death, certainly in America. I don't know whether that's a global, I don't think it's a global thing, but in
it's
America,
it's huge around the world, but America is very high.
Third leading cause of death. I mean, you know, and we know now that, you know, the ventilators actually were killing people. I don't know if you saw the documentary film by Journeyman Pictures of the nurse. Her first name is Erin, I can't remember her surname, who was undercover in the New York hospital. And you can see when you watch it, they were literally killing people. They were leaving people to die. They were giving people treatments they knew were going to kill them. I mean, it's truly horrific. And so, as you say, you know, people are getting paid. It's business. It's not about people's health. It's about money. It's business. You get X amount for diagnosing someone as COVID. And we're now seeing that, I always say, the truth prevails. The truth always wins. And so now we're seeing all these doctors and nurses coming forward who are starting to tell the truth and who are starting to expose everything. And we're seeing people's death certificates, people talking out about, you know, my dad had cancer for 6 months and they marked him as a COVID death. And these aren't rare occurrences. These are
there's people being killed by a bus and they're put down as COVID.
Yes.
That's been the
of course. And then when you look at the testing, I watched an excellent video which was David Icke interviewing Dr. Andrew Kaufman, and it was only released recently. Explaining very clearly about how the tests work and about how they're completely and utterly meaningless. And so then the more you learn, when you actually see it for your own eyes and you learn this, you realize they are creating case numbers with a test that's completely irrelevant. So that's a scam. And the figures are being used to justify the measures, but the figures are fake. And so then you've got a question, like, I mean, and this is reality. This is not conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy reality. This is actually what's happening. And then you have, the medical industry, I call them the medical mafia. It's about money. And this is not saying that, you know, doctors and nurses are all complicit and everything, because, you know, there's lots of amazing doctors and nurses. It's not about that. It's about the system. It's about the people who run those systems. And, you know, they are incentivized. If you're financially incentivized to do certain things, then more often than not, people are going to do it. And then when you get into the pharmaceutical industry, when it comes to things like vaccines, you know, vaccines, even Bill Gates has said on camera, vaccine investment, he gets a 20-to-1 return.
Yeah. And I also heard him on a YouTube video where he was saying we can do population control. We can reduce the population. You know, he forgets himself at times. And I cannot understand how anybody would believe him or how he became Mr. Health spokesman of the world. But he has invested in every single thing, the World Health Organization, all these manufacturers of injections. And like all you have to do is look back to his when he was with Microsoft and he was before the competition authority. Like he's bouncing back and forth. You could tell he's completely lying. That's actually on YouTube. You can find that video.
Yes.
And you can see. So do you think a guy that's a compulsive liar who has been doing a lot of bad things with competition automatically becomes the man to save the world? Like there's people in India have been injected. He has caused a lot of problems there. And in Africa, why it's not mainstream? Because the four or five corporations own 90% of the media. And you mentioned it earlier. I even saw it myself because I remember when I was over in Ireland, because I don't watch the telly here, but they had BBC on, and the way it's done, you're manipulated into you. Like I can understand why people start believing it. And all I tell you is turn off your television, stop reading the newspapers, and start following the right people.
Yes.
Do your research
Absolutely.
and you know, watch your circle of friends as well. Because if you've got 10 friends and they're all talking about doom and gloom, no matter how positive you are, change your friends and then slowly bring in a few to waken them up. But you're not going to wake up. If you're going to be listening to negativity from 10 people, it's very hard to actually get out of this. But once you do see it, you're not going to go back.
Absolutely. And I think, I think there's a couple of really important points that you just made. And the first is turn off your TV. When I stopped watching what I call mainstream, you sort of normal mainstream TV many years ago, like 6 years ago, it was the best thing I've ever done for my mental health. Even now, as I said, I look at it for 5 minutes, I think, oh God, it's so toxic. I feel the toxic energy. It's nasty. And it's not the truth. My mum said to me recently, she said, oh yeah, but you need to watch the news because you need to know what's going on. And I said, but Mum, it's not what's going on.
It's what they want you to think is going on, so you comply.
It's not really what's going on. There's a million great things happening in the world every day. It's just a select few things which are decided by the people who control the media, and Big Pharma are a big player in that, and others, and they control, as you said, there's only like now five or six corporations that literally control all media. It used to be 50, and now it's like 5.
Somebody recently said it's gone down to 4. So like
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I need to. It was 5 because I know it used to be 6, then I went to 5, but I think it's 4 now. And
and the media is just the propaganda arm. It's just the way that they get these messages out to the masses, and it's the way that they, I actually believe what the media companies are doing is completely criminal. And I do actually believe that in the future, these people will be, more and more exposed and brought to justice, because I actually don't know how these news reporters can sit and do the stuff that they do. And maybe they believe it. I don't know. Maybe some of them do and some of them don't, and they're just scared to lose their jobs or whatever. I'm not really sure, but I just don't see how someone can do what they're doing and be happy with themselves.
That's something that I'm kind of contemplating at the moment, and not just because if you look at who's got the most influence at the moment, the journalism obviously is huge, the medical industry and the politicians, and I think it's, if you're surrounded by them, to be talking to them and ask them, because if they're listening to this, they should look in the mirror when they go home and go, is what I have just done correct? But it's if they're children, because like their children might fall out with them and get married, and then they're outside of the system. Like, don't think that they're protected. There's nobody protected. If you're a police officer, or if you're in the military, you are not protected. If all you have to do is look at the military in the States, most of them are homeless when they come back. The whole system, and they basically, a lot of them lost their lives for another live fighting, invading countries. But like, just
Yeah.
question everyone and ask them, look, because I think they've been brainwashed from a certain time, and they get into a system and they just believe it. I don't believe that they think that it's wrong. They've been conditioned, like they have all these techniques of making you have a belief system. So their belief system is what they're doing is correct. And the more people that will actually kind of tell them and shake them and go, hey, do you actually realize that if you're a police officer, by spraying somebody that's a peaceful protester or battening them, that's totally wrong. If you're a
Yeah.
doctor, that you're actually, giving somebody cholesterol tablets for life, that is totally wrong. You're not doing the right thing. And just
Yes.
make everybody
Yeah.
conscious of what they're doing, because every single person, we can't go for an industry. Like, I've known that we cannot attack the medical industry. It hasn't worked for the last 100 years, but where it does work is the individual. We have to change the individual, and that was
Absolutely.
how we'll make the difference.
Absolutely. And this is why, it's so important to share this information, so that, people, I do believe that when people are ready to wake up, when they're in a place where they're receptive, then they will do. And it's not going to be everybody, but it doesn't take every single human on the planet to be awake in order for great change to happen. We're already seeing protests that are happening around the world. We're seeing people standing up. We're seeing, it's almost like a snowball effect of this stuff, and alternative channels, of information like this, just this conversation. There are so many channels now, and so many people who are speaking out and sharing the things that go against the mainstream narrative, that it's just growing and growing. It's like an alternative media source for people who want the truth. And the thing is that people, what I find really interesting is that there's so much criticism and kind of hate, especially online, towards people who are trying to expose the truth. And I find it really ironic, because the people who are trying to expose the truth, they're not governed by anybody.
They're not getting paid for
They're
it.
not getting paid for it. I mean, look, I could have just said, oh, I'm going to turn a blind eye and just focus on business. And I've actually spent half of my time in the last 6 months researching and sharing truths, and I haven't got a penny for it. What's my motivate? And I'm an intelligent, awake, educated person. What is my motivation? And then people say, oh, Bill Gates wouldn't do anything bad. And I'm like, yeah, he's only set to make billions and have like global
Trillions,
control,
I
which
think,
is
at this
what
stage.
he's always wanted. And this is another thing, actually. I remember watching a very there's a trauma specialist who I love and I've learned a lot from, called Dr. Gabor Mate. I believe is he Polish? Oh, I don't know. He might be. He no, I don't know. He isn't. No, but he did a great podcast episode on Russell Brand's podcast Under the Skin. And he was talking about how people who have been deeply traumatized as children are often the ones that end up being in positions of power. So either in government, or they become, very, big, like CEOs. And so he was referencing, people, like some of the politicians that we know. I don't think he mentioned Gates, because it wasn't a topic. This was last year when it was published. But a lot of these people who have these agendas, they have been, I believe, they're either, they've been brought up in a belief system from birth a certain belief system. So they don't think they're doing anything wrong. You know, does Bill Gates think that everything he's doing is wrong and he's going to do it anyway? No, I actually think he thinks it's like he's getting his power, he's getting his control, you know, he's getting to you know, be the person that his father always wanted him to be. And apparently there's a lot of like trauma from his childhood and stuff. And so these people end up being, you know, in these positions of kind of authority or power because of their trauma or their upbringing, you know, their beliefs. And you can kind of liken it to a religion. You know, when people have their beliefs, they're so stuck in them. Well, why would that not be the case for sinister, you know, for things that we would consider to be sinister? But, you know, for someone like, you know, Bill Gates, he might be sat there thinking, we need to massively depopulate the world. It's got to happen. And he believes it, and he just thinks that that's what we need to do, you know. And so I think it's important, again, people realize that
we can start with him.
Yeah, I mean, people are not, all of these people in, it's the same with the issue that we have, which is a real pandemic of paedophilia and you know, child abuse and Satanism and all this kind of stuff, which I know many people aren't ready to face up to or to awaken to. But the idea that, you know, I've had many people say to me, oh, there's no way there could be all these, you know, paedophilia rings and things in government. Why not? You know, it's like people have this view that anyone in authority is this perfect
and like, especially, I mean, being from the UK, like Jimmy Savile, I mean, he done terrible things, and he was hanging around with Thatcher, Edward Heath, all of them. So
the
you
royal
just look
family.
at the whole, yeah, and like, so people should actually wake up. Show me your friends, and I'll tell you what you are. And you know, you look at the like Epstein's flight logs, Bill Gates going there, and you know, the Clintons and everything, and they're saying, no, it's all okay, just follow the trails. And I think you must have known that as well. Like, the more that you expose, it just keeps coming back to the same people the whole time.
It does.
You know, it's not as if there's 100,000 people. I mean, obviously there's people at different levels complying to this. Whether they know the full agenda, I don't think they do. I think they just do what they're told, which unfortunately is giving the higher up their agenda. But I don't believe that at each level they know what's going on.
No. And I think also, you know, we have a big challenge in the collective with people trusting government and other authorities and always looking to someone else to make things better, looking to someone else to save us, looking to government to do, you know, do what's best for us. And many people have that mindset. And I think, again, it comes from our conditioning and it comes from childhood traumas. We have been conditioned our entire life, and this is what the school system was designed for, to make us compliant and to make us not question, you know, authority, and to think that someone, oh, look, we get parents, then teachers, teacher knows best, do what the teacher says, and then it's, you know, government knows best, do what government say. And so we're brought up from birth, most of us are, if we're in that system, to not trust ourselves and to not be individual and to not question authority and to look to other people to tell us what to do. We get the same with doctors. Oh, you know, I have people say to me, you shouldn't be sharing anything about health because you're not a doctor. It's this belief system where people think that because you have a certain title that you're the be all and end all and you know everything and you should be like looked up to and trusted. And that's just, it's false. It's all false. It's all conditioning. But many people don't realize that. They don't realize that they've been conditioned. And I still have people now say, well, what should I do? What should I do? That people are always looking for someone else to tell them what to do. And I said, what do you want to do? Like, I don't know. And they can't connect. This is another big challenge. People are so disconnected from themselves. They're disconnected from their heart, from their authentic self. They're not able to feel into what feels right. So they're all up in here trying to analyze data, listening to what, all these authority figures say. But I often say to people, well, what feels right? Like a classic would be Bill Gates, right? So Bill Gates, you see him talking, and there's all these clips that we have of him talking about the second wave, and he's laughing as he's saying it. And when he gets asked awkward questions, he can't answer them, and he stumbles around and he looks uncomfortable. You don't need, that's not proof, that's not facts. You can watch that and you know in your heart, in your gut, you know intuitively, is something wrong here? Do I trust this person? Like, we meet someone, we know if we trust them, if we're connected to ourselves, we know if we trust somebody or not. We know if something doesn't feel right. We can walk into a room and know it doesn't feel good to be in there, because the heart has so much intelligence. There are more messages going from the heart to the brain than the other way around. The heart has, I've just trained with Heart Math, the Heart Math Institute.
No, I listened to your podcast, actually. It was very interesting, on the heart.
So I've just studied with them and really learning about the power of the heart and how to listen to the heart's intelligence and really have heart coherence, so that we can use our mind, but we also must be very connected to our heart and to our body, because we feel if something is right or not. It's not all about fact and logic. And the challenge many people have is that they're stuck in their kind of analytical, logical mind. And the brain is a polarity organ. So it's like right, wrong, black, white. If we really want to know, like, what's right, it's like if someone's lying to us, we know. We know if someone's lying to us. We can feel it. It's all of our senses. We can feel it in our body. But when we're disconnected, we don't. And then also what is happening for many people is cognitive dissonance, which is where our belief system is challenged, and it's like a psychological phenomenon where it's like, it's so painful that we won't allow ourselves consciously to admit it or to allow it to happen. It's like there's this this pain, and from an emotional perspective, most humans will do anything to avoid feeling unpleasant emotions. So if something is challenging our beliefs and it's creating a painful feeling, we will just dismiss it. And look, people do this on the micro, in terms of when they're in relationships, and maybe they kind of know that their partner's being dishonest with them, or is having an affair or whatever, but they don't allow themselves to admit it. And so they kind of push it down. And so it's kind of there, but it's not. And this is what happens. And so I think if people were more connected to their hearts and more connected to their bodies and to trusting themselves, they would see through the illusion. They would see what is happening, but many people don't. And so this is why we see so many people looking for concrete proof and facts of things. And if you can't provide that, they say, well, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist.
I've got that recently. And if somebody posting on every single I put up and just giving, because that's the other thing, you have all these so-called fact checkers, but unfortunately that's corrupt as well. So like Snoops is being caught out, but the rest of them, and like, you don't have time to be proving that the fact checkers that they've put under your post is incorrect, because your mission for me is to just tell people what's going on. It's not my mission to actually prove to you what you're actually, because you've got false information, putting it under my post, because you don't have the time to do that. But unfortunately, that's where people are going. And like we said it at the start, we're doing this from love. We're actually doing this from compassion. We want to help people to realize there is a lot of bad going on, and we want to kind of shake this up and kind of go, no, this isn't how it should happen. There's so many industries that are corrupt that can be changed. It's not like this can be changed.
Absolutely, it can be changed. And this is the thing, there are the power of these people they are not born with these special, all these people that are, that we're being told all these things that we've got to do and everyone's following along. The only reason they have power is not because they are born with these special superpowers where they have authority over everybody else. They have the power because we do what they say. That's it. I think it's either David Icke or somebody else that says, the power of the few is only attained by the acquiescence of the many. And if people just say no and don't do it, there is no power. It's almost like people see it as like these people just have this power, and it's like their government, they have the power. Well, only because we do what they say. If every single person, yeah, well, this is the thing that people forget. They are supposed to serve us. It's like the police. The police are supposed to protect our rights.
And like, if you look at what happened, because we were discussing that before we actually went, like in London at the moment, there's a demonstration. So they stopped them bringing in the big screens, and they've during when they were interviewing different people to the crowds, they turned off the power. So, and in Ireland last week, like everyone was coming, they were putting barriers up, but the people just basically walked up to them, took the barriers away, and walked past them. And none of the police attacked them because there was too many people.
Yes.
And people must realize, like, you don't need to be attacking the police. You don't, like, they're just, unfortunately, they're doing what they're told, but they actually have to question, why are they complying? Because their children, their family are going to be stuck in this system that they're, working towards.
Absolutely. And this is it. And if people could just realize how powerful we are, we're very powerful as individuals, powerful. We're healing machines. We have limitless potential, like all of these things. And we just don't believe it because it's being conditioned out of us. But also if people can understand that as a collective, we are super powerful, and it doesn't have to be, as I said, it doesn't have to be every single person in the world protesting or every single person being awake. It won't take that much. It just needs to be, large enough numbers of people. And it's the same, with the protests. It's a good example. I was watching the video this morning live of some of the stuff that's going on there. And the whole of, I think it's Trafalgar Square, it's packed. Yeah. Well, what are the police going to do? Like, they can't, there's nothing they can do.
And
but if
just
there
on
was
the
10
press,
people,
if
they
would
arrest them.
Like in Ireland last week, what they did is the RT said there was like 500 people there. So they took a picture of at an angle, yet the whole place was full. So that's how you will, like, when you look at things like that, because then people started sharing that. So if you see that they're actually manipulating the crowds because they don't want people to know, because if you're sitting at home on your armchair and you think, this isn't going to make it, and you see that there's, like, Berlin, I think, had 1.5 million. They're expecting they could be even 5 million for their next protest. If you see that, then you go, ooh, there's a lot more people that are actually against what's going on. Instead of if they're telling you there's 500 and it was very few people there.
Absolutely. And this kind of relates to your point that you made about who you're surrounding yourself with, which for me is the most critical thing with anything in life, to be honest. It's who are you spending your time with, online or in person? Because if you are someone who has realized, maybe you're not fully awake, but you've realized something's not right. If you are surrounded by people who are moaning and supporting all of these, draconian measures and believing in the government and all of this stuff, you're going to get dragged down. I think that there's a concept called crabs in the bucket. It's where, like, you've probably heard of it, where a crab will try and get out, the other crabs will drag it back in. And that's what happens. You are the result of not just who you hang around with, but who your influences are and who you're watching and who you're listening to. And so, I mean, there's been, going back a few months, I remember seeing on social media some people that I used to know many, many years ago, and the stuff that they're sharing and the way that they're talking. And I just unfriended all of them because I don't even want to see that negativity. It's just, it's just supporting the narrative. And so I would encourage anybody who is just, becoming aware of this stuff, or just knowing in their heart that something is very wrong, is to start opening their eyes and ears to all the amazing content that is out there. There's podcasts like this, there's the High Wire with Del Bigtree, there's loads of health practitioners doing, they've got their own private channels now, and they're kind of trying to get off social media because the censorship is just so crazy. And you, the more of that you see, the more you're informed, but also I think the more hopeful you feel about what's happening, because whilst it's in some ways it's very, it's kind of pretty terrible what's happening, I actually feel that this is brilliant in the sense that it is unveiling so many things. It's like 2020, the year of vision, the year of seeing through all of these things, whether it's the way the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry works, the way that governments are, the way that all these companies are literally poisoning us, like the corruption, the pedophilia, the Satanism, all of this stuff. Yes, there have been pockets of people talking about it in previous years, but they were very small pockets and they were all labeled completely crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas now there are so many people, we didn't have all the content that we have now, and people speaking out about all this stuff before 2020. So I kind of feel like it had to happen. And now it's all coming out. And the thing is, when the cats are out the bag, they don't go back in.
Exactly.
And so I think it's beautiful to see more and more people waking, and the more that people do, and the more that people question, the more influence they have on the people around them. And it's like this butterfly effect or a snowball effect. So now we're seeing, a few months ago, there wouldn't have been the crowds in Berlin and London like there are now. But as it gets worse and worse, and the more people wake up, the bigger the crowds are going to be. And you can't reverse that. Once people know, they know. And
Yeah.
so the movement of, for freedom and for human rights is just going to grow and grow and grow. It's not going back. And that gives me so much, I feel really, positive about the future in that respect. Let's not kid ourselves. The way that things were before 2020, the way that the world wasn't great.
Like, the thing is, I mean, it's been like this for over 100 years. I was thinking just recently about my schooling. We started at 4. I don't know in the UK what age you start, but you're
4 or
sitting
5,
on a chair
yeah.
with a finger up to your mouth, and you have to comply when you should be out playing and doing art and just enjoying yourself. And you have to do exactly what they tell, and they take the art out of the class, they take the music out of the class. They just make you're part of the system to be a slave for life, so that you'll work for a corporation and do exactly. And once you realize that, you go, like, even now, I know in Germany and a few countries, they're after bringing in that they're going to be teaching children in kindergarten masturbation from 2 to
Yes.
4 years of age. And
Yeah.
like you see who's running the world. Why would they do something like that? So I know that's not a thing you might want to hear, but it's something that you need to hear, because you should go in and you should tell them, no way are you to teach my child that. You should ask the teacher, okay, who actually, this is the only way. You have to go up the scale as well. So, for example, in Germany, and I know it's in a few countries, but you should say, okay, who has told the teachers, taught them, okay, this is the education is supposed to go, the finance minister or whatever. Okay, who told you that? You just keep going back and you'll find the same source. The same person feeding it in. But people should never, the same with putting a mask on the child going to school. Do not, keep them at home. Don't put a mask on a child. They're even in Ireland, they're even saying they have to give them breathing breaks.
It's honestly, this is I mean, I don't have children myself, but even I feel like when it comes to the children element, it makes my blood boil that people are going along with this stuff. Like, I cannot imagine, and again, that, you know, no parent wants to harm their child, so I can only assume that these parents who are going along with this stuff, like allowing the masks and the distancing and the trauma, because there is a, you know, there is a huge amount of trauma being created for these children, and it's going to affect them psychologically for life. That's the reality of what's happening. I can only believe that a parent who is allowing that to happen genuinely believes that they're doing the right thing, and that they're in fear, you know, and they believe what the media and the government are telling them. And if and again, it all goes back to beliefs. You know, we have to understand that someone's belief system is going to drive what they do. So, you know, I know there's many people talking about, you know, parents are, you know, they're kind of criticizing them, you know, and saying that, you know, they're harming their child and stuff. And yes, they are, but they're not meaning to. They are just believing what they're being told, or they kind of feel like they have no other option. But the effect on physical and mental health for children of these measures is disgraceful. And I really hope that this is the one thing that really helps to wake more people up. It's seeing that, you know, it's like people feeling into their hearts and looking at these children. You know, we've seen the pictures of children in cubes, children standing in dots, you know, 6 feet apart, not allowed to look at each other. It is criminal. I mean, it really is criminal what the authorities are doing. And it's child abuse. It constitutes, and in fact, if you look at the official guidelines on what constitutes domestic abuse, it's all the things that the government are doing. So we're experiencing mass domestic abuse from daddy government and mummy medical care, right?
Yeah.
And this is what's happening, and more people are waking up. And I do feel, just because I really notice what's going on in the collective, that the children topic seems to be creating a lot more passion from people. Like, people are really passionate about you know, speaking up for children's rights. You know, it's like, if you're not going to speak up for your own freedom and health, at least do it for, you know, for these innocent children. Because when these children are growing up, it's imperative that they have touch, connection, that they can see faces, that they can play. That's how a healthy child develops. So what they are doing is creating trauma, and they are creating unhealthy psychological development in these children who, by the way, don't die of COVID.
Yeah.
They don't even
And
spread
parents are
COVID.
stopping, like, to be honest, like, I told my son is 6, I'd like not take off the masks, and I explain everything to him. So he even said to me, we were in a cafe one day, and like, I refused. It was the one place that I had the certificate to say I don't need to wear the mask, and they said, no, you have to. So I said to him, I was getting him an ice cream. I said, no. And he was outside, and we're sitting down, and he goes, I don't understand it. How come they're handing you the cups and the plates, and then you're sitting down and you can take off your mask and drink, but you have to wear your mask? He's 6, you know,
Yes.
and he
Yes.
actually sees the stupidity of it.
Yes, and this is a good point, actually, because, you know, that children at that age, they haven't had they look at things with fresh, curious eyes, right? They haven't had it conditioned out of us like most adults have. So when a child is, you know, and I've seen many people sharing some funny stories about children, you know, lately, and children are questioning and saying, well, this doesn't make sense. Well, why do we have to wear a mask to walk to our table, but then we take it off? That doesn't make, you know, children are seeing it for what it really is. And I actually saw, which was very funny, somebody post on social media the other day about how their child had been basically red pilling all the other children and basically telling them all the truth about what's going on, and how the parent then got a call from the principal, and, you know, there was a problem because and then so many other people started jumping on and saying, yes, my child's doing that too. So I kind of feel like there's a potential roots movement from very small children, within their own, their own kind of communities. But I really, I really would encourage anybody who thinks that, the government have their best interests at heart to look at what they're doing to children, because it really does break my heart, and it's not, it's not okay. You've got to ask yourself why, when there's no evidence of children spreading or dying from something, why on earth would they need to be treated in such a cruel manner? And it is child abuse. There's no,
without a doubt,
there's no beating around the bush. Like, it's horrific. And the trauma that's being created. I was in a cafe the other day here in Mexico, and there was a mother with her child who looked maybe 5 or 6, and they came in and they're wearing masks, and they sit down and they still were wearing the masks even though they were seated and they didn't have to. And they, you could see in the mother's eyes, she looks terrified, which makes me feel sad. But then the child started screaming that she didn't want to touch anything because of the nasty germs. So she just kept crying, and she was like, no, the nasty germs, the nasty germs. And I almost burst into tears, because it's the trauma that child is experiencing now is going to have a huge impact on their life, and the parent doesn't even realize.
No, because the parent they're pushing their belief system onto the child instead of, just stepping back and trying to analyze it. So, like, I think the way forward is, one, when you're looking at the social media, like you had a beautiful post actually the last day. I'm not an airport. Don't tell me that you're going to depart.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was like, if you don't like what I'm posting, you don't need to announce your departure. It's not an airport and no one cares. It's true. It's like, you don't like it, go elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But people, emotions are high, running high. People are in a very, very unique situation that's ripe for stress and trauma, and therefore people act out in ways that they wouldn't normally act out in. Some of the behavior I've seen from people, even people that I know, has been quite shocking. And it's because people are stressed, frustrated, scared, whatever. They're having traumas that are unhealed from the past, being triggered, or being kind of re-remembered, and that can play out in some pretty interesting behaviors. And so again, I think we have to be very mindful of that. As conscious beings, it's important that we share the truth, and it's important that we speak up, but it's also important that we maintain that consciousness and that awareness when it comes to appreciating where other people are at, and not letting it bother us. It's like, I get a lot of abuse from people, and it actually doesn't bother me, because I know I'm in my truth, and I know I'm being authentic and doing what my heart feels is right. Yeah. And that if other people aren't okay with that, then that's okay, but then they need to be removed.
No, and like, to be honest, I've done it recently, and you shouldn't fear doing that, because if somebody is writing negative, because no matter how tough you don't want to see that. Like, no. So just remove it and surround yourself with the right people. So I would say the homework for today would be: turn off your television. Don't be reading the wrong newspapers. Start following the people that are telling the truth, and do your research, but maybe go DuckDuckGo. I don't know what other kind of platform you use for, because Google doesn't really give the right.
DuckDuckGo. I mean, I've heard that it's not completely uncensored, but it's a lot better than Google. There's no point using Google anymore.
No, Google
There's absolutely.
has to. And unfortunately, most of us have our Gmail and everything. We've been using it for 10 years before we realized, what they're doing. So, but
of course. But stay away from Google, stay away from the news. I really like, channels like the High Wire. There's some good, really good interviews, and there's so many great investigative journalists as well. Once you kind of start getting into it, for people that want to learn about Bill Gates, James Corbett did an amazing series on Bill Gates. He's a brilliant investigative journalist, and on the Corbett Report YouTube channel, he has a 4-part series all about Bill Gates and the agenda, and showing what's really going on. And it's independent. He doesn't even ask for money for the work he does. He must do another job, I don't know what it is, but he doesn't ask for anything. And he's been doing amazing work for many years. In fact, 6 years ago, he did a video which is called Rockefeller Medicine, which I would recommend for anybody, because he explains how the Rockefeller family basically destroyed holistic medicine and created what we now know as the medical system and the pharmaceutical industry, and also the education system. And so when you watch that, it's like 45 minutes long, you can see exactly how and why everything kind of changed. So once you start getting into people like that and podcasts like this, and you start listening to all these alternative views, as long as you're willing to be open and to feel into what feels right for you, I think that is the best thing that that people can do. And as we said, once you know, and then you go on your own journey. It's not what is true for one person will not necessarily feel true for another person. And in the reality is that most things are not concrete. It's not about concrete proof. It's about, even if you ask the question of, with someone like Bill Gates, like, oh, is he trustworthy? Well, that's just something that comes, that you listen to the information, you take the stuff into your brain, but then there's a lot of it's about feeling into what's right for you, and what do you personally believe, and what do you want to do, and not allowing yourself to be dictated to by other people. So yeah, turn off the news, start listening to alternative sources without an agenda, and surround yourself with the right people. Whether that's just removing certain people from your social media and just starting to connect with others. Like over the last 6 months, I've disconnected many people from Facebook, but I've reconnected with, or I've connected with so many new people who are all on the same page, and they're all kind of sharing this information, and it really does make a big difference, and it really helps people it helps to facilitate that journey of awakening. Because as we said, if you're surrounded by people that want you to stay back in pull you back into the bucket, then it's going to be incredibly difficult to break away from that, from that, I guess, that matrix. It's from that kind of mind prison. So yeah, I think that those are the best things that people can do.
No, totally agree. And I think it's when you see that, and you see the amount of people that are more getting involved, and people that didn't even have, they have different businesses, but now they've realized how bad it is, that they've decided to put their focus on educating people. It gives you hope for the future. So I think,
absolutely.
Don't listen to what we've said. We're just kind of giving you a few tips and tricks on what's going on. It's not all doom and gloom. There is hope there. There's plenty there. You can make a conscious decision. When you're buying the products, don't buy the products that are, unhealthy for you. Every single choice that you make, every person that you connect with has an impact. You have a vote with every single thing you're doing. And I think that by doing that, that's how we'll spread. The ripple will go across the world.
Absolutely. And we can see it. Look, we can see it happening. More and more people are waking up. More and more people are standing up for their rights. And it's growing, and it's snowballing. And so I do feel very hopeful and positive about the future. And I think that's very important, because it's very important that we keep our vibration high, and we balance out. Yes, we're sharing a lot of stuff which it may be uncomfortable for people, and it's kind of quite sinister, and it's not, you know, all butterflies and rainbows. But at the same time, we must also keep our own vibration high, look after ourselves, you know, like get good sleep, eat well, meditate, do breath work, do things that keep our vibration high, because the more of us that have a high, as we know, everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. So if we keep our own energetic vibration high, the more of us that do that, the more of a positive impact that has. So I think it's important that we balance that out.
No, absolutely. Listen, it's been wonderful talking to you. So how can
Likewise.
people get in contact with you?
Okay, so so for my health coaching, I have my website, which is just laurajanebolton.com. But I also have Instagram is kind of my public domain for sharing about health and truths on what's going on.
I'd encourage people to connect with you on that, because you post some brilliant stuff.
Yeah, I post a lot in my stories because stories is so easy, and I follow so many amazing people who are sharing the latest of what's going on, and who are sharing, great articles and memes and things like that. So I share a lot in my stories, and more and more people are doing that now. So yeah, those are the best ways.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I put them all on the podcast description.
Yeah. Oh, and I also have just to mention, I'm developing a digital course to help people, because normally I only do one-on-one work, but I'm developing a digital course which is 20 ways to feel better in 5 minutes or less. So they're like 20 powerful tools that I've tried and tested that you can use to keep yourself to minimize your stress, to keep yourself feeling good, and to help to process the emotions that are happening at the moment, because it's super important that we all look after ourselves and we all do things to help us through this time, because it is stressful and there's a lot going on. So yeah, I have, and all the details for that are in the bio of my Instagram. So that's kind of probably the best initial place probably for people to go.
Okay, perfect. Listen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's all for the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. We also have the speaking podcast, the meditation podcast on roycollin.com. Be sure to give us a 5-star rating, and we're on BitChute and YouTube, and give us a thumbs up. Until next week, take care.